Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Americas Center and the Farrar Theater stream stage. We're really glad to be here in person. Welcome to those of you that aren't here with us, but joining digitally. We're glad you're with us as well. And we're looking forward to spending a good day, a good morning together. Just GMID 2022, meet safe. Let's kind of get at it. So if you're streaming and you want to offer up or ask a question, please use the chat feature, and we have Ryan taking care of the incoming questions, and we'll jump to those a little bit later. But I thought we'd get started. We have a great group up here, and we're going to just get a little conversation going, maybe a little bit about how things have been, what things look like going forward, and then maybe what's going to happen way out there a ways. We'll get there, perhaps. We'll see how much time we have. So we're looking forward to doing that. So to get started, let's start with you, Brian, down on the far end. Give us an introduction.
Hi, I'm Brian Hall. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Explore St. Louis. It's great to see all of you in person this morning. I'm filling in for Kitty Ratcliffe, our president. She sends her regards. She's actually in Washington, D.C., with the U.S. Travel Association, and they're making some lobbying calls to our congressional delegation on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. to make sure that we advocate for our industry.
Yay.
So today you're stuck with the marketing guy.
And thank you to Kitty for representing us so well in Washington, D.C., right?
Indeed, it's really important that legislators understand the importance of our industry. And I know Dave Peckinpah in the audience representing Maritz Global Events is very much in a leadership position in reference to advocating for all things travel, tourism, meetings, and conventions. They've made a massive investment in Brand USA, and I'm really delighted to report that we're open again to the world. And we're going to be even more open to the world when we introduce our direct service between STL and Frankfurt, courtesy of Lufthansa. On June 1st, mark the date, we welcome our first inbound flight.
I love that. I love that. Well, great. Well, thanks, Brian. Dale, give us an intro.
Hi, I'm Dale Shooter. I'm with the Electrical Apparatus Service Association. I'm their meetings and expo manager. So we're supposed to talk about what's happened with us in the last couple of years.
Yeah, a couple. Well, tell us a little bit about your events.
So we have our annual convention, approximately 2,400 people, 100,000 square feet of exhibit space. We're actually booked here in St. Louis at the end of June. We did have our show last year, so this will be our second show since closing down for COVID. We also run a small series of educational seminars throughout the United States, and have really bulked up our virtual learning platform. So we have webinars. Last year we did do our seminars virtually, but we're not doing that this year. Kind of have learned our lesson about trying to do more than an hour to 2 hours of education virtually. And we'll not be doing anything longer than that into the future. We aren't even planning any kind of a hybrid component to go at the same time as our convention. We are possibly looking at doing repackaging it and putting it out afterwards as another educational option to our members.
So you said you'll be here in June,
Correct.
Right at the end of the month,
Yes.
or end of June.
Yes.
How's that going?
Actually, it's going pretty well. It's so, I was talking to someone out before this, it's very hard to have any benchmarks anymore. You can't really compare it to last year. You cannot compare it to 19. So we're just kind of going on, what we're seeing. We've sold out 2 of our hotel blocks. We're about 70% sold, I think, at the Marriott. We're looking at picking up an additional hotel. Our registrations had been a little slow, but this week we really saw them picking up. Exhibitors were about 30% back from where we were pre-COVID. We're ahead of last year, and just in the last 2 days, I've received 4 contracts for the show. So that's really picking up. It's seeing a lot more last minute things. I think some of it has to do with just the, the supply chain, people seeing that they are able to get some of their products and show
Yeah.
them. I also heard from one company that said they had just dropped their travel restrictions, so they're now looking at attending. So I think that's also changing, and people are starting to book last minute. I think the location is helping us being more central for people with the drive-in.
Everybody loves St. Louis.
Exactly. Well, if you
Of
don't
course.
if you don't want to fly right now, if you don't want to fly because you have to put a mask on, whatever it is, the drivability definitely helps with the marketing of this
Awesome.
location.
Very good. So Michael, give us a good introduction.
Oh, well, first of all, for
A
those
good
of you-
introduction.
Oh, well, I guess I should introduce Greg. For those of you at home, I wanted to just let you know that we all are wearing pants today, which is new for especially Greg. But we are fully dressed and fully prepared and back in business. So I'm the CEO of the National Wood Flooring Association. We do an annual trade show that's about 3,000 people. We are in Tampa starting next week. So I'm flying out on Saturday. So this is kind of the last couple hours at home before we take off. But we are hitting 2019 numbers as far as attendance. So we feel like this show is finally back. We did a co-location with a tile show in July of last year, which is how we ended up having a show because we couldn't have our show in April, but by July we were able to meet in Orlando. So that worked out well. We'll be in Tampa in next week. And from a trade show perspective, I guess the exhibitors are a little bit down, but the attendance is up. So I think we're gonna have a good show.
Very good. And Corri.
Yes, Corri Roberts, Director of Group Sales at the Marriott St. Louis Grand right across the street. So welcome everyone and go Cards. So.
Yay. Oh, by the way, you know that this afternoon there's this significant event occurring downtown. I don't know if you've heard about it or not. And we were talking earlier, there happens to be this guy that the Cardinals hired some guy that used to be here. I don't know what's going on, but Brian thinks it's a really good thing.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, and I'm sure that you guys have read the same. The Cardinals picked up the option on Albert for $2.5 million. They'll probably sell $10 to $15 million worth of additional tickets with him as part of the package. So this is going to be a fantastic season. We're really excited. I just want to share with you a quick side note concerning the Cardinals. We estimate that the season, the regular season, and of course we expect that there will be a postseason too, generates $300 million worth of economic impact for this community,
Yay.
which is absolutely huge and so vital to us. And then this coming weekend, just to put a cherry on top, not only do we have 4 Blues games this week, 3 Cardinal games, including opening day. We have Supercross here at the Dome. On Saturday, the 9th, this coming Saturday, we're going to have 100,000 people in downtown St. Louis. And I called that the other day at a press conference, tourism heaven.
That's good. It's all good for this area. Yeah. Well, okay. So in a variety of different ways, all of you, and we were talking earlier, you know, I can't remember what 2019 was, what 2020, well, I don't even know what today is, but we navigated some pretty interesting times. So I would love for you to just reflect on 19 and 20 and just kind of give us kind of the story of what has occurred, you know, from a venue's perspective, a couple planners, and then a hotel. So Dale, if we could start with you, I know that you kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit, right?
Yeah, so when COVID hit so our show, we shut it down, made the call April 19 that we wouldn't go forward with our 19 show. And at that point, we did change it to a virtual platform. We carried over as much of the education that we were going to offer into the I don't even call it hybrid, because it was just virtual. And it was, it went fine. We had about 400 or 500 people log in for it. We offered it free of charge. Then after we got that through, we started planning what we were going to do for the rest of 19. We had all our educational seminars to look at. So we do about 6 to 8 a year. And we did take, those are usually full two day, highly technical, intensive seminars. So we realized that we could not do that in the same format. So we took them, we made them into 4 half-day, into 4 half-days. And that way the people could watch it in the morning, still be at the office and get their work done in the afternoon. And those are actually highly successful. We had higher attendance at those than we do in person. We limit the number in person just because of the interaction with the instructor. After 30 starts it's not as robust. So we actually was very fortunate and successful with those. We also started a webinar series online and was able to offer that free of charge to our members also by selling sponsorship. So our associate members who are suppliers to the industry sponsor those 1-hour monthly webinars, and we were able to offer those free of charge. So we were still able to push out a lot of education to our members, even though we couldn't do anything live. Last year, we did decide to go live with our annual convention. It was in Fort Worth, which played to our advantage since Texas opened up a lot earlier than a lot of other parts of the country. We had about a 30% decrease in attendance, both in our regular attendance and our exhibitors, but we were very happy with the show. Everyone there was ready to get back, do business. It was very, very highly evaluated. It was we considered it a very successsul show, even with the decreased attendance.
So mask, no mask, what did you do in that regard?
So at first, we followed the CDC guidelines. We figured that was a lot easier to do than try to enforce an internal guidelines, because we wouldn't get as much pushback from our members. Our members tend to be a little bit more on the conservative side. So a lot of they don't like masking, let's put it that way. So we followed the CDC guidelines, which changed about 106 times before we finally got on site. So it was a constant education process. We had on the website a full COVID page of what we were doing. We every time we had a change, the CDC changed their guidelines, we would push that out in an email. By the time we got on site, basically the guidelines were, if you're fully vaccinated, you did not have to mask. We did not ask for proof of vaccination. Mostly everyone was unmasked. On the attendee side, it was interesting. On our exhibitor side, a lot of we did still have a lot of masking. Our staff was mostly masked. So obviously now that the mask guideline has been dropped here in St. Louis, we will not be having any masking. We will not require masks at our convention. We are offering a COVID testing site for our convention, and we did get that sponsored by one of our exhibitors, mostly for our international attendees because of the requirements when they go back. So they don't have to hunt out a site and to be tested prior to going back. So we wanted to eliminate that as part of the obstacles to attending our convention.
What's your international attendee look like right now? What's that looking like?
It's actually looking pretty good. A lot of coming from South America. This morning I was checking registrations. Our European and world attendance has started to really pick up, especially since those countries are also
Sure.
dropping their limitations to travel to.
Super.
And we've actually even seen some international exhibitors coming back this year.
Very good. So Michael, give us your kind of evolution through 19 and 20. You kind of went an
Sure.
interesting path as well.
Yes, well, we were 3 weeks away from our show when the city that we were going to shut down. So within those 3 weeks, we were expecting that, but we weren't surprised that we were going to be able to have a show, but we were certainly waiting for the city to tell us that, as opposed to us taking action, just from a cancellation standpoint. So within that time, we created a virtual expo. I would say that the education portions went really well. We basically just lifted those up from the show and placed them into a virtual element. So that worked really well. The trade show piece not as well. People really didn't get into, we had companies that had 20, 30 leads in their exhibitor box, but they never went to check them. And we would remind them that they were there. Like, you have leads. So, which is, I think is the purpose of a trade show, but that didn't seem to matter because they really didn't want to log into the console. So we found that portion didn't work as well. I think people like to see product in person. And ours is wood flooring is something you want to see up close and see the quality and touch and all of those things if you're installing it. So that piece didn't work quite as well. But then, like Dale, we launched a whole series of webinars and 2 podcasts, and we also brought our members together by member type. So our manufacturers, distributors, contractors, and retailers, with 4 different groups for them to zoom into on a weekly basis while we were in lockdown. Fortunately, in the beginning, it was pretty scary. No one knew when they were going to be able to go back to work, but as it's kind of interesting, you would see certain pockets of the country start to open up. So people were participating in those. Those probably went on for, I would say, 9 weeks when things were really in lockdown, just so they had somebody to network with and talk to and figure out how to move forward. And obviously, if you have people working on a mill floor, they had to completely reconfigure the way the manufacturing process worked. Distributors went to more of a drive-through portion, so that was really interesting to watch. And so they had an opportunity to talk to each other across the country to figure out how to move their business forward. And then when they stopped attending those as their businesses opened back up. So those were kind of a short-term solution to just getting some answers for the industry out there. And then we didn't have a show in 19 or 20. I don't know, these years all run together now. I don't know if anybody knows what year it is. I would sometimes have to stop and go, what is this? But we didn't do 2 shows. And then last year we were able to co-locate with Coverings, which is a large stone show, and they were already in Orlando. And so we were able to pick up part of the space they already had because they weren't going to use it because their show was smaller. Our show was smaller. So that worked really well. And we ended up hitting our normal attendance numbers because we were pulling people from their show onto our show floor. So everybody that was at our show is very, very happy. We had a lot of people who didn't show, who didn't exhibit, but came and walked the show. So they're very excited about the show that's coming up next week because they anticipate that it's going to be as good as what we had in Tampa. But like I said, we're maybe 70-75% of where we normally would be on the trade show floor. There are still some companies, particularly from Europe and from other parts of the world, that aren't exhibiting that they normally would due to the COVID issues and that kind of thing. And just not knowing, a lot of corporate structures still have mandates in place. We're seeing those lift. And I think everything has just become a very short-term business, no matter what business you're in. Supply chain issues all over the place are really difficult for everyone to manage. But we're seeing definitely a lot of registration now that we're getting a week out. Those numbers are really populating very quickly. We even have some exhibitors who are booking a week out, and they're just going to pull their stuff onto the show floor. But they waited because we put a cancellation clause in place, like many businesses. So their deposit was non-refundable. So we did have a lot of exhibitors that we knew were coming, but they didn't really register until the last minute because they didn't know whether we would, how COVID would impact that situation.
Super. We're going to come back to a couple topics. We're going to talk a little bit more in the future about hybrid and where you guys see that going, because you both were very innovative and used it in a variety of ways, but I think you have some opinions on it going forward. The other thing we're probably going to talk about in a little bit is this lack of ramp up time. But before we go there, from a venue perspective, what was that journey like?
Well, this may actually induce a PTSD response. So if I start twitching, you'll understand. On the 23rd of March, after a banner year in 2019, and we were also trending up in both January and February, Mayor Cruzen announced at the same time as County Executive Page a stay-at-home order. We had about 90 volleyball courts set up throughout America's Center. We were ready for a CAP Sports volleyball tournament. And I'll never forget looking at in the eyes of the organizer, who was looking at potentially financial ruin. With all those volleyball courts set up, all the expense that had been realized doing that, all that had to happen is the kids come out and play the tournament. The revenues happen, people stay heads in beds. You know the story. It didn't happen. We had to tear up all those courts. bring them back to Indianapolis, and they probably sat for the better part of a year. We had to furlough a lot of staff. You know, what began as 15 days to bend the curve, remember that?
Yeah.
Turned into a stay-at-home order that was actually extended. We had a front row seat, though, when it came to developing protocols to help us reopen. So St. Louis City and County jointly announced the reopening of our community on May 18th. And we actually worked with infectious disease specialists at Washington University to develop protocols to guide the reopening of hotels and restaurants and venues. We have never, as an industry, we've never faced this before. Infectious disease people knew what they were doing, but there was very little in writing. The CDC hadn't published any guidelines. So we actually, quite literally, in collaboration with these public health officials, we wrote the book. We wrote the protocols. I laughed at the time that I was a marketing guy playing an infectious disease expert on TV because, you know, we were having to tell people, here's what you can do to operate safely. So we began to understand that we could operate safely in the mid part of 2020. We had an event activity here at the Dome that Matt Dewey and Renee Eichelberger and our team brought to us, and that was the American Ninja Warrior. We actually had the first production right next door in the Dome of an entire season of American Ninja Warrior. It was really heartening and very uplifting after months of being shuttered and missing friends and colleagues to actually see an event happening here at America's Center. We earned a GBAC STAR certification, the Global Biorisk Advisory Council, Good Housekeeping seal of cleaning approval, and that was an important investment during that time period in understanding how to keep the facility clean, because it's now become an expectation, I think, with a lot of meeting professionals that you're going to have a GBAC certification. And then towards the end of 2020, we brought in Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. We were looking to make a market. I mean, our sales department became the rescheduling department during this time period. All we were able to do is take existing meetings that kept rolling onto the horizon and then move them sometime in the future in collaboration with our customers. So an enormously difficult time period. The Michelangelo Sistine Chapel exhibit proved to us and our stakeholders, and importantly our staff, that we can do it. We can operate. We came to realize that we can operate under these conditions and make a market. Wow. Moving forward into 2021, amateur athletic competitions saved the day. Volleyball tournaments back to back in both January, February, and March, if memory serves. I think we had 4 or at least 3, and the kids came out and they competed. And we started to see additional event types. Inland Waterways was a trade show, first trade show that we opened up, I think it was May of 2021, right next door in the Dome. And then we had a steady stream of event activity throughout 21, including the gymnastic trials. Remember when Simone Biles was in the house? And during this time period, remember, we were told we could take our masks off. It was all clear. Everything was going to be better. That was short-lived. And and we saw even more event activity happen throughout the fall time period until we had the Delta variant surge that was followed by Omicron. But now I'm really pleased to say that we are about 10% off as measured by hotel occupancy in the St. Louis metro area. We're 10% off compared to 2019. That's improved from 2021. We were 20% off. And catch this, in 2020, 42% off in hotel occupancy. The industry was brought to its knees.
Great segue to Corri.
Thank you. Gosh,
From a
I would've thought of
hotel's
that, so.
perspective, you know,
Absolutely.
tell us the story.
Yes, absolutely. We stayed open the entire time right across the street, which was an experience I hope to never live through again. We went from a team of 65 managers down to 10. And there was 10 of us running the entire building because unfortunately we had to put our team on furlough, which is heartbreaking. And you never want to see your extended family not there. So there was about 10 of us running the hotel, and my resume now has increased quite a bit. So I'm skilled in all aspects of the hotel, and I will say I've never had a greater appreciation for everybody's role in that hotel. Especially our housekeepers. I don't know how they aren't exhausted after 2 rooms each day, and they do 15 to 16 rooms a day. Great appreciation for every single role in that hotel. And I am not a good Starbucks barista, so please don't ever ask me to make a beverage for you, because they don't come out too good. So, but I will say that one thing that we've learned is in the hospitality industry, the only constant is change. And we constantly had to change our strategy, our protocol, our business to what was happening in the world. So it was definitely an eye-opening experience for us because you get used to doing your job and your tasks a certain way, and everything changed. So now, you know, there's cross-discipline training, and, you know, throughout now, even some of our housekeepers will go to food and beverage and vice versa. And there's been a full training for that so that we can have cross disciplines. So I will definitely say that all of our meeting planner friends, please continue to book the meetings. It's putting people to work. It's allowing families to be fed. And it's just a much greater aspect that I look at this industry now, besides just here's a contract, here's a conference. There's people's lives affected by what we do every single day. And I have a much greater appreciation for that.
That's awesome. Yeah. So true. Change. So I want to ask you guys a question. Just listening to all 4 of you, there was a whole lot of innovation that occurred. You were forced into innovation. Much like I'm assuming those of you sitting out here and those of you listening on Zoom, what innovations were you forced into? What new ways of thinking did you have to adopt? I love kind of where you, Dale, you and Michael were going with digital. You did some things, but that might not be the future. So just open question, whoever wants to go first. You were forced into innovation. What was it? What'd you do? Dale says go first.
Yeah, it's funny that you call it innovation. I don't know if it was really that innovative, but I mean, we just had to change the way of our thinking in terms of, you know, as Corri said, like, how are you going to provide your membership with what you had been providing before, and how are you going to deliver it to them? So we just had to like rethink. So, you know, everyone's sitting in their offices. How are you going to deliver it? So the answer was pretty clear that you need to, you know, send it out into the virtual sphere somehow. You know, we did it through a combination of both live presentations and, you know, pre-recorded, and we put out a lot more information that was available to our members by signing into our website, and they could pull that information off as needed, consume it when they could, as opposed to just, you know, live, where you have to have it at a certain time, you need to be there. And we will continue doing that because we know we have a portion of our membership that can't come to our meetings. They're either they don't have enough staff to leave and close down their business for a certain amount of time, or they just don't have the budget or the inclination to do it. So I think that's something going into the future that we will do. I just, on the other hand, we don't see ourselves doing a hybrid component for any of our meetings into the future. They just don't work for our membership, especially, as Michael said, the exhibit side. And we had the exact same experience. It was there. We refunded all the money to our exhibitors, you know, in 19, but we still had our interactive trade show floor and the contact and everything. But I think a few people might have gone out there, but at that time, it just wasn't something people knew to do. I think maybe now it might be a little different because people are interacting differently on those platforms, but they're still not the same as the touchy-feely, I got to see the equipment, I want to shake someone's hand.
Right.
You know, our industry was considered essential. It never shut down. So our people kept working through the whole thing. So we needed to keep providing them with the information they needed and how to adapt, as Michael said, to the new industry, and how to service as they had not had to do in the past.
Sure. Michael, hybrid for your point of view on that spin?
Yeah, I'd say, the first year we tried to do as much as we could from the, from that was planned. So from the digital standpoint, we kind of just went with the same schedule and put that out there. And I think, the thing we learned there was that content can't be too long, number one. And number two, live streaming your general session, that's really hard to watch at home. Sometimes hard to watch in a room, but it's certainly not built to, really be enjoyable for those that are watching it remotely. So we have gone to the route of just doing basically what Dale said, and we're recording everything, and then we'll repurpose that in our online university. So people will still have access to it, but it won't be in the same format. So I think we learned that you can't put things in the same format and expect the same results. The other thing that I think is really, really good for this room of folks is that meetings are here to stay. There's no, I think if anything, for the last 20 years, we've all been told we're going to be disintermediated. The internet's going to take over. There won't be in-person meetings, all of those things that, we've been told for years. Now I think we have an argument back to that. That's not true. People really do want to be together. And I think they recognize that. Just seeing them see each other when we had our show in July was reward enough. People that hadn't seen each other for a while and done business together for years, they want to be in person. They don't want to look at each other on a screen. They want to have dinner. They want to have drinks. They want to do what they've been doing for years in building their business. So that's the really good news, I think, for all of us, is that we have a defense now to say, no, I don't think you can do that digitally.
Excellent, right? We have a job. We have things to do, right? So I appreciate that. You guys, thoughts on innovation? How did the spin, the twist, the whatever?
Absolutely. I think in terms of innovation, all of us have increased technology. The mobile app wasn't used as often before. Now we've seen tremendous amounts of people using the mobile app to check in. So one less touchless point, and gives them comfort when they're coming into a hotel. Same, in terms of mobile dining. More and more people are ordering their food and taking it up to their room to eat, which is fine. But before, they may have not had that option. So now the mobile apps are quite popular at hotels and venues to give people their choices. But I will say, based on what Michael was saying, we had a group that came in one time, and this was actually mid to late 2020. So it was a program that came, and everybody was so excited to be in person. And one of the attendees stated to me, I've learned more being in person for a 6-hour session than I have throughout COVID virtually so far. And it was just very powerful to me to hear that, simply because he had the FaceTime with his regional vice president. He had the connections with his peers to ask those questions that he may not have been able to ask on a Zoom call. So it's just a very powerful statement to hear that learning is taking place, growing companies, business transactions are taking place at what we do, putting on meetings and events.
Right.
So it's very important to keep, of course, a segment to record and have that as an education tool for your members to share with them afterwards, which hopefully you're charging, because education is invaluable. But it certainly doesn't take over the face-to-face and being in person.
Awesome, right?
Well, while we certainly could have done without the experience of the pandemic, we learned a few things, no doubt. We learned about how important our industry is in the absence of human interaction for the better part of a year, 14, 16 months, whatever that period of time was, before we were really able to get back together in person. So we all take stock, and when we see the reactions of human beings coming here to America Center, and they're hugging and they're so excited and energized to be back together, there's no better testimonial to the vitality of this industry than that. The other thing that I think it did is it brought us together as a team, and we're working wonderfully together as a management team of Explore St. Louis. We're doing more with less, and we've innovated so many things, including the stage, stream stage, which has been enormously popular with a wide variety of groups, courtesy of my friends in the back with Encore and Smart City. It really adds a lot of utility, flexibility, and functionality to meetings that need a turnkey solution. We learned that outdoor meeting space is important because we're going to see more surges of this virus in the future. So as part of AC Next Gen, we're planning a plaza that's going to be 80,000 square feet of outdoor meeting space.
Awesome.
That is all purpose built so that you can put tenting up, you can have exhibits, you can do a lot of traditional meeting activity outside in the heart of the innovation district in downtown St. Louis. So in the end, as much as I hate to say it, it's made us here at Explore St. Louis better.
Wow, I think we've all kind of been in that same kind of challenge of forcing ourselves to look at our industry differently. And I'm encouraged by that. I love your comment that we need to be together. I mean, we've proven that we can get through, but oh my gosh, when we're together, it's a whole lot more powerful. Okay, you all have alluded to this. Things are different now when it comes to planning. And I just, as you're a week out, you're a month out, you guys are dealing with ongoing efforts by a variety of organizations. What's changed?
Can I go first?
You can go.
Oh, by the way, Brian's playing the role of Kitty Ratcliffe today. He has many acting talents. But anyway, yeah, so everything is different. There's no guarantee on anything. We were, we've sold our trade show floor, and 10 days ago, we were asked to pick it up and move it 150 feet. Well, that sounds easy enough, but it's really not. When you're dealing with columns and everything else, and you've sold space for thousands of dollars that now, is your exhibitor going to be able to move, or are they not? And it's doesn't matter what our contract says. We don't have a choice. We have to move 150 feet over. So, there's a tug and pull that I don't think was there differently, but I also feel like we're working better together to get through those things, because it's really not their fault. They weren't able to do the construction that they had scheduled either. So those are the things I think that, with the hotels in particular, I feel like during COVID, everybody really worked very well together to try to make any meeting happen, both on the planner side and on the hotel side. And I hope that spirit of cooperation remains, because I think that, we've all learned that we are in this together. And if the meeting's successful, we all are successful.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then, there's a lot of finger pointing to go around. So hopefully we can maintain that.
I would add to that. I would say communication is vital. I can't help if you call me the day before you arrive that you need 300 more rooms. So keep the lines of communication open throughout the planning process. I want to talk to you 12 months out, 9 months out, 6 months out, where before I may not have talked to you till about a month out. So keep the lines of communication open. It's absolutely important in our industry right now, so we can continue to work together and find solutions together to situations that are taking place.
Well, I don't plan meetings, so I call the friend. And that friend is Jennifer Poindexter with Meet St. Louis. I think Jennifer's somewhere out there with her Cardinal gear on. What Jennifer told me is that the nature of the conversation with the customers, the planners that she's working with, has fundamentally changed. It's shifted from can we meet to we have to meet.
Wow.
And how are we going to pull it off? And I think that's just enormously heartening. So they're scrambling. They're doing more with less. They are responding to supply chain issues. Transportation, ground transportation, did you know this? It's really hard to come by right now because people don't want to drive. So shuttles, operating shuttles, you have to make tough decisions. And a lot of those decisions are happening at the last minute. So planners are having to be very nimble. Their partners here at Explore St. Louis and hotels throughout the community, to your point in reference to frequent communication, are having to respond nimbly as well. And I think that's a big shift in the modus operandi that the industry enjoyed going back to 2019. We're a well-oiled machine. Everybody knew their role. Everybody knew how to do this. Now we're having to reinvent the processes.
Very good.
I hate to be like the wah-wah person. One of the things and both of you guys hit on it, is that when COVID happened, everyone shut down. Now we're back to this where it was almost like we are going at maybe 20 miles per hour. Now we're at 100 miles per hour. And the hotels and the suppliers are trying to ramp up to meet that, but it's not happening as fast as I personally would like it to happen. So I am seeing a certain service, I don't want to say lack of service, but it's not as fast as it was. And even though the communication lines are open and we're trying to push out and say, this is what we need, blah, 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 it's not coming back as fast in all situations. The other issue I'm seeing is costs just rising, and that's happening everywhere. And I know it's no one's issue. And, everyone's having to deal with it, but it's when you set your budget 6 months ago, now suddenly gas prices are shooting up and food and beverage is shooting up. It's hard to keep in line.
What I'm sensing is that the velocity of the recovery is a trajectory that's going like this. Our ability as organizations is not quite as flexible. We're trying to make, I was talking to Greg a little bit earlier, we're trying to make prudent decisions when we onboard people. We don't want to just hire anyone, but we're having, we eliminated a lot of workforce here at Expo St. Louis. I know you guys did at the Marriott Grand, and certainly hotels and the entire hospitality sector. Bringing them back in needs to be pragmatic, and we need to know that it's going to be sustainable too, because we don't want to overstaff during this time period, because what if we hit another bump in the road? What if there is another variant and we need to adjust to that? So I think that everyone's trying to be cautious right now, make the right decisions. But the fact is that the demand is starting to outpace the supply.
So as planners and organizers of events, how are you dealing with that? How do you feel about that? What are your expectations of venues and hotels?
Well, of course, my expectations are, where they were 3 years ago. I'm still having my meeting, and maybe it's not my expectations. I totally understand what's going on. My attendees, not so much. So they're demanding the same level that they have been getting all along, and there is a gap there where I can only get to so far. So how do you educate? How do you bring the expectations down from your attendees? You don't want to do that because you want to give them exactly what you've been giving them all along. So you have to look at your program and kind of jiggle it a little bit, and maybe do, instead of having your 3 sit-down dinners, are going to be more like reception style. So
making adjustments in your plan to align more closely with the ability to deliver.
Right.
So,
or what you expect the delivery, I understand it. I came from a hotel background. I know what you can and cannot do. And as Brian said, and I said, the meeting demands are going like this, and it's hard to staff up at that rate. I'm hoping you can do it by June, but and I got it. And it's difficult, and it'll be interesting to see what I think. Last year when we met in Texas, people kind of got it. Like, okay, this is the first meeting back. I know everything's not going to be exactly how it was. I'm afraid that they now have that expectation that, oh, we're back to normal.
Right.
So everything's going to be just like it was, and it's not. They're going to have to understand that everything might not just be there. I'm already seeing it in some of my supplies, and in terms of registration bags and name bags, things are hard to come by right now.
Can I make an editorial comment for just a quick second? I view the hospitality industry as a 3-legged stool. You have leisure travelers, you have meeting and convention delegates that you guys bring to us, and we very much appreciate it. And then you have business travel. One of those legs has been absent conspicuously throughout the pandemic. We need businesses to get back in the office. We need them to get back on the road in mass. And until that takes place, and we have the diversified portfolio that fully sustains,
good point,
and holds the industry up, we're not going to be able to fully recover, because we have peaks and valleys right now, guys. Weekends for leisure travel, spring break was off the charts and amazing in St. Louis. We're going to have an incredible weekend this weekend, but then Sunday rolls around. And so we need more business travelers to sustain the momentum of this recovery.
Perfect. Great. So Michael, you and I were talking earlier, you're a week away from Tampa. Next year, you're in Milwaukee, but you normally contract further out. How's the contracting process going?
Well, first of all, in many of the cities we were scheduled to be in, no one was working. So even talking about moving a contract forward was difficult. There wasn't anybody there. They weren't working. For example, we were in Baltimore, and their facility, the convention center, was actually being used as an overflow hospital. So they weren't even thinking about what were they going to do when they were able to open back up for business. And that was mandated. So they were waiting for that to be lifted as a city regulation in the first place. So, it's been complex. There's nothing, you think you've got a plan for the next 4 or 5 years, and then something like this happens and there is no planning. So to be honest, we just booked next year's contract. We just finally, that was a lift up. We basically lifted those contracts up from 19 and moved them to 23. And that shouldn't have been that complicated. We were using the same space, the same hotels, same blocks. And so we had signed contracts, but the contracts have changed significantly from the ones that we signed in 19 versus the ones that we're signing today. And again, back to that flexibility that we've all learned to work with each other. None of us have a guarantee on what's going to happen. There is no history to book future meetings with right now, and that has to be taken into account on both sides.
Right.
And I know that there are definitely issues where maybe planners aren't having meetings they probably should, and so there's pain on that side. But there's also pain on the side of the planner who doesn't know what they really need to book, and it needs to be flexible as much as possible.
Any comment from a hotel perspective on that process?
Yeah, I think right now it's there's so much short-term demand that, to your point, looking out for the future, it's like, I got to take care of this program coming in a month. So, and these are big programs that are happening short-term, 300, 500, 600, even up to thousands that are taking place because people want to meet now, and now the door is open. So now it's the time they say, oh, we got to plan a meeting. And I think everybody in this room is probably experiencing that when someone comes to you and say, oh, we need to have a meeting now. And then it's scrambling, right? Availability is tight because all of the shifts from 20 and 21 into 22. So availability is more limited. So it puts a little bit more stress throughout the whole process on the planner and supplier, because we want to host your meeting, we want to have you there. But again, it's the flexibility. Can we shift one day? Can we tighten up space on this day? And there's a lot more flexibility taking place right now because of all the short-term requests. But certainly, the contract process, work with your hotels. It has to be a two-way street, right? We want to work and protect the associations and the corporations, and we also want to protect the hotel assets. So as long as we can find a compromise on terms that may be, oh, I don't like this term, I don't like this, it's coming to that compromise and making sure that both parties come out ahead at the end of this and protect it.
Well said. So we're going to start opening it up for questions, and those of you that are on Zoom, feel free to send in the chat. Ryan's monitoring the chat. Maybe as we kind of make that transition, 10 years out, what do you see? 5 years out.
I'm not predicting anything anymore. I can't even tell you what's happening next month. Yeah, I think that's the one thing I've kind of learned through this is that, I'm not. Who knows? I think it's just like it's anyone's guess.
I truly think 5 to 10 years out. Right now, people are scared to go into hospitality when they graduate. I don't want to go in that industry. Look at what happened. So I see 5 to 10 years out, education across the board for what we do. We're a $1 trillion industry within travel. And to have that many people affected by what took place, now it's our opportunity to get the word out and to educate and to bring people back to want to work, corporations, associations, the travel industry and hospitality, because right now people are afraid to enter into this industry. So it's time to educate them.
Very good. Hey, we have a question. We could use some audio over here.
Here, do you want to use this one? Gary's got you.
We got it covered. Thank you for that. That was great.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Better. Wow. Voice of God. So I'm Rob Bryce. I'm with Prestige. I'm a board member at MPI, super thrilled that all of you guys are here today. This is just, it's fantastic. So also very grateful that to be booking meetings like crazy. But I don't know if you guys have bought an airfare lately, but can be scary, you know, depending on where you're going. And I'm wondering, Dale and Michael, are you guys hearing any kind of pushback from
Great question.
potential attendees that just, hey, I don't want to pay $500, $600, $700, $800 to get there?
I have not heard the airfare issue yet. I mean, as I said, we're here in St. Louis this year, so I think that helps us with our drivability. But even with our seminars, I have not heard people say anything. I don't know if it's just that they get it. You know, it's an overall thing. So far, knock wood, no.
Definitely knocking
But
on that wood.
Yeah, it is
But
crazy.
Is anybody running into that?
We
Maybe
haven't
it's
heard
just where I
anything.
want to go.
Yeah. I've complained about it personally.
We have a couple people in the audience who are bumping into it for sure, right?
So yeah, there's no doubt that there's a lot of pressure on transportation prices right now, but you have to put it into the context of what you're investing in either a meeting and convention experience or a tourism experience. So if it costs you another $15 to fill your tank of your car to get here, and your average trip investment is $1,000 as a percentage, that's not a lot. So we haven't seen gas prices as far as vehicular travel be impeded, but we're keeping a very close eye on air. And I know that prices, I've been sourcing some different destinations, are starting to ascend, but I've also heard that they should be easing off by the summer.
That's great. Great news, right? Ryan, I don't know if we have anything from Zoom. If you want to.
I do have a question. It asks the current state of the labor market in St. Louis.
Brian, do you have a point of view or?
I just want to share that we agree, certainly agree with everything that Corri just said in reference to the positioning of careers in hospitality, and workforce development is an imperative for us at Explore St. Louis on behalf of the entire industry. We're going to be collaborating with the St. Louis Community College. We're going to be collaborating with other colleges and universities throughout the community that have hospitality programs and curriculum to be able to shine a light on why somebody ought to be enthusiastic and energized to pursue a career in the best industry in the world. So we're going to be working on this. We're going to be investing in it. One of the things that we're going to be doing is that the hospitality industry in this community and across the nation hasn't really come together before this point to market careers in a concentrated and focused fashion. We're going to do that in St. Louis. We're going to tell stories about hospitality professionals. Barry Draper, our Director of Partnership, has our Hospitality Heroes celebration each year on this stage. We're going to blow it out this year. We're going to amplify it. We've already opened nominations for Hospitality Heroes. We want to recognize people. We want to show them how important they are to this industry, and we want to attract more. And we want to make sure we're doing so with DEI imperatives in mind as well. And so we've got a great opportunity in this community to really grow the workforce. So I'm bullish on it. I think that we're going to see, right now we have about 90,000 St. Louisans that are employed in travel, tourism, and hospitality. According to studies that the last time we did it was 2019. I'm sure that's dropped somewhat. But the fact is, it's the 6th largest industry in St. Louis, and now it's poised for growth.
Yeah, that's good news too. Okay, so I do want to ask like one kind of last question, and if any more questions pop up, we'll slide those in. But you know, as we look at our audience here, you know, we're on this incredible trajectory. We're growing really fast. I'll learn that word one day. You mentioned that there's not a lot of space. What one piece of advice would you share with the audience about, you know, planning, getting your meeting done?
Flexibility is key. If you come and say, I have set dates, I can't meet any other time, it makes it a real challenge because we don't want to say no. We want to welcome you, but you know, if you can shift one day forward, one day back, it could be a whole different picture, and we could be working together. So it's all about flexibility moving forward.
Super, Michael.
Yeah, I think revisit what you might have visited last week because it's probably different today. I can give you an example of that. So there are a couple of cities that we've looked at that didn't have space when we looked at it the first time, but a couple of weeks later we came back and asked the question again, and they did, because everybody's rebooking everything moving forward.
Constant roll.
It's just a rolling, yeah, it's a rolling target for a while. So I think that's important too, is to completely look at things, you know, new every day.
Awesome.
Dale.
I mean, the same thing. You just have to be nimble. I mean, you just cannot keep saying that's how we've always done it. You got to throw that out the window and just have to be willing to, okay, this changed. This is how we're going to react. But maybe even have that in the back of your mind. Okay, this could happen. Then I need to do this. It's just a whole nother mindset almost. And, you know, maybe I'm being overly optimistic. I think now that we're on hopefully the other side of it, I can't see us shutting down again. It might just be going back, you know, taking a step back to the mask or whatever, but I don't see meetings stopping again in
Yeah.
terms of.
I don't
being
think there's
live.
a single elected official in the United States that would have the stomach,
Put their
because they
name on
wouldn't be
that.
in office very long if they were to issue a stay-at-home order again. I agree
Well,
with you
it's not even the
completely.
stay at home. It's just the fact that I think people understand how we can do it. I mean, we proved it. We can do it safely, and we're just continue doing that.
Okay, so we have flexible, revisit, nimble, Brian.
I have really nothing to add. I think they're all absolutely right, all of the above. And I do believe that our best days as an industry are before us. All of the prognosticators that wrote off the industry, you know, during the pandemic made predictions, like Bill Gates saying that business travel and meetings and conventions would never return. They were completely full of you know what. So we proved them wrong. And I think that everybody just needs to be patient with one another right now during this time period. That I guess is the one word that kind of sums up what everyone is talking about.
That's perfect. Well, listen, St. Louis, thanks for being here. GMID 2022, meet safe. Spend some time talking. We haven't done this in a while, so let's hang out and chat a little bit. And it's been great having you here. So thank you to all of you, and thank you to you.
And let's go Cards.
Let's go Cards. Very good. Thank you so much.